On a quiet spring evening in 1940, a respected man sat in his favorite chair, reading a detective novel in the comfort of his own home. It was the kind of evening he enjoyed, calm, predictable, and ordinary. His wife was upstairs, the house was locked. But then, something happened. A noise, a struggle, and by the time his wife hurried down the stairs, it was over. The man was a scientist, a reformer, and a national voice in a battle over public health. His work made enemies, some of them powerful. The question remains decades later, was this a personal act, or had his crusade to improve public health crossed the wrong person? This is the story of Lewis B. Allyn. Hello friends, my name is Marcia, and this is Midwest Murders. In 1940, Westfield, Massachusetts was a quiet working-class city in the Pioneer Valley, roughly 100 miles west of Boston. With a population just over 16,000, it was a close-knit community that moved at a slower, steadier pace than the nearby industrial centers. Its downtown streets were lined with brick buildings, modest storefronts, and churches that echoed with familiar voices on Sundays. Known historically as the Whip City for its once booming buggy whip industry, Westfield had shifted toward more diversified manufacturing, rubber goods, textiles, and precision tools. The Great Depression had left its mark, but by 1940, Westfield was showing signs of recovery. Men had gone back to work. Young people were attending Westfield State Teachers College, and with the war looming overseas, local factories were starting to receive military contracts. Despite these changes, Westfield remained traditional and conservative in many ways. Families stayed in town for generations. Neighbors knew one another. And the idea that a man could be shot dead in his own home without any apparent reason, shook the community to its core. Violent crime was rare. Murder was almost unheard of, especially in the home of someone as prominent, educated, and recognized as Lewis Allyn. Against this backdrop, his sudden and violent death wasn't just a tragedy. It was a disruption. It didn't fit with how Westfield saw itself, and it left questions lingering that the town and the country were never quite able to answer. Lewis B. Allyn, age 66, was a nationally known chemist famous for starting the Pure Foods movement, prompting the federal government to pass the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906. He had begun his career at Westfield Normal School, later renamed the Westfield State Teachers College, where he still had his lab. His work revolved around eliminating using harmful chemicals to flavor and preserve food products. He and his wife Alice had been married 37 years and raised 2 children, a son Louis, who was also a chemist, and a daughter Rachel. Alice and Louis lived alone in a large home at 68 Western Avenue in Westfield. On May 7, 1940, the couple was spending a quiet evening at home. Louis was in the first-floor sitting room reading a detective murder mystery. Alice was upstairs in their bedroom, also reading. At about 10:30 p.m., Alice heard a commotion downstairs and a male voice that she could not identify. Going down to investigate, she found Louis on his knees on the floor of the sitting room with his head resting on an easy chair, still alive but mortally wounded. "Send for the police," he uttered as she helped him lie on the floor. The killer had vanished, leaving no clear trace behind. After phoning the police, Alice called a neighbor, Clarence A. Kennard of 6 Hawthorne Street. He and his wife arrived minutes before the police. By the time they arrived, Louis had died. Lieutenant Richard Cotter and District Attorney Thomas Moriarty led the investigation. 4 shell casings were found, 1 in the front hallway and 3 in the sitting room. A pool of blood was found in the front hall a short distance inside the door, and bloodstains led to the kitchen and back to the sitting room. Several unidentified hairs were found clutched in Louis's hand. No murder weapon was found, and there was no apparent motive. Reconstruction of the scene indicated that Louis had been sitting in a reclining chair with his back to the bay window, reading. Apparently, to answer a knock or the doorbell, he had laid the book on the floor next to his chair, open and face down. Police determined that the shooting had occurred just inside the hall near the door. They found the veranda light on, which indicated that Louis had turned it on. An autopsy performed by Dr. Allyn R. Moritz, a Harvard pathologist, assisted by medical examiner Edward Smith and Dr. Robert Hildreth, was conducted at the Lamson Funeral Home. It was determined that Louis had been shot with a .22 caliber high-standard automatic pistol. 5 total shots were fired. one through the heart at such close range it scorched his clothing, one entered his right shoulder and lodged in his lung, one entered his left breast, one hit his left hand, and the last inflicted a superficial stomach wound. Two young women, Elizabeth Ackley and Anna Potonik, employed as mother's helpers in the home of neighbors Mrs. John Bushman and Mrs. Louis Masuccio, reported that they saw a strange man in a black sedan watching the Allyn house 3 times over the previous 3 weeks. He was described as 35 years old with a dark complexion, wearing a dark topcoat and glasses. The car parked for several hours in the middle and latter part of the day on Granville Road, 100 yards behind the Bushman home. On a second occasion, the girls saw the car and unidentified driver parked at Highland Avenue, and a third time they spotted the car and driver parked on Western Avenue at Spruce Circle. Each time they drew Mrs. Bushman's attention to it. Both Mrs. Bushman and Mrs. Masuccio were concerned for the safety of their children and considered calling the police, but did not. At the time of the murder, Granville Road passed a short distance to the south of the Allyn home, bordering an open field where Lewis would practice archery. Highland Avenue was to the east of the home, and Spruce Circle was to the west. While initially staying silent about the blood trail through the house, several days after the murder, D.A. Moriarty revealed that there had been a terrific struggle starting at the front door, into the kitchen, and back again. He also revealed that Lewis had sustained blows to his head from the butt of a gun, resulting in the wounds initially reported to have been caused by his fall to the floor. Because of these disclosures, police narrowed down the list of suspect and possible motives to someone or something connected with Lewis's work. His son Lewis was adamant that the killer was someone his father knew. Neighbors, business associates, and family members were questioned, but no suspect was ever developed. Funeral services were held at the Second Congregational Church, and his cremains were laid to rest in the Center Cemetery in Montgomery. Alice died in 1976 at the age of 103 and was laid to rest next to her husband. Over 80 years later, the grand home where he died still stands, and the memory of what happened that morning in 1940 still lingers. Theories have circulated, some grounded in logic, others steeped in speculation. Was it someone close to Lewis? A stranger with a grudge? Or was it something deeper, perhaps tied to his relentless drive to hold powerful interests accountable? His work changed how America thought about food safety, but at what cost? Sometimes the most dangerous thing a person can do is tell the truth. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and may the truth reveal itself in the shadows.